everybody's here that can be or needs to be or wants to be.
Okay.
Oh, there's Suzanne. Is it Suzanne? See if you put your speaker on, Suzanne. Can you look and see if you're muted?
Okay.
There you are. Hi.
Okay. Hi. So during the program, I pressed that to mute it.
Perfect.
All right. Got it.
Awesome. We have some new people.
Oh, it's just
Everyone's coming on. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint up here.
Hello, everybody. This is Diana Williams. How are you, Catherine?
Hi, Diana. Nice to see you.
Good to be here. Good seeing you as well.
Oh man, this is awesome. We're going to have such a good class today. All right, I'm trying to get my screen up here. Give me a sec. I can find my PowerPoint.
The other teacher always asks us to mute it.
Okay.
There's 6. I think there's about 9.
Can you guys see my screen?
I can see it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
All right. Now I just have to figure out how to see you guys and see my screen.
That's weird because I don't see your screen.
You don't see it?
No,
Oh.
I
Oh,
still
I
see
see.
everybody's pictures.
Well, now I just took it down, so that's okay.
I see you, but not the screen.
Yeah. You see you, but not the screen.
Okay, I just took the screen down. I'm gonna see, I'm trying to get it so I can see you guys and see the PowerPoint at the same time. But it's not, let's see, maybe it's, there we go. Okay. All right, we have 1 minute and then we will start. That's not what I wanted to do.
Am I muted?
Nope, you're on. We can hear
Okay.
you.
I just don't see I don't know how to put my picture on there. But I got the sound and I can see you.
Is there a video? Do you see like a video, like little camera icon somewhere?
I didn't know how.
Looking. Oh, yes, I think I do. Well, that didn't work. Maybe. Join a meeting.
There we go. That'll work. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. As you guys know, oh, there goes my phone. Hold on, let me turn this off here. There we go. So as you guys know, we're recording this. And if there's any sensitive information or something you don't want to be recorded, if you're talking, please let me know and I will pause the recording, okay? As we move forward, there'll be more and more times where maybe we want to have a little more confidentiality, a little more privacy just within our class. And we don't want maybe some of the stuff we're talking about to be out there for the whole world to access. So just so you guys know, just keep that in mind. And I'm so happy that we have some of you guys who weren't able to join us last week. Somebody's not muted. So if you think about it, try to mute yourself if you can, and then unmute when you want to talk. So I'm going to go ahead and just give just a little quick overview, just because we have probably 4 or 5 people that are with us that we didn't have last week. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourself and maybe talk about why you're with us, why you signed up for this class, and what you hope to get from it. So just so we can kind of get to know you. And I just kind of shared I'm Kathy, obviously, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm licensed in Texas and in California, and I have a private practice. I'm building a private practice in Texas, but I do have one in California that's ongoing. I also work with military families. I work doing a lot of postpartum depression assessments and caring for military families and mommies that have new babies. So that's just my joy, and it's a fun job. It takes away from some of the other stuff I do in my private practice, which is more trauma, betrayal, anxiety, depression, that kind of stuff. So I do a lot of trauma work. I work with kids and adults and families and couples and a little bit of everything. So that's me. I have 5 of my own kids. I was a single mom for about 8 years until I married my husband, who's wonderful. And his daughter is married to Kirk and Susan Hayes' son. So if you guys know Kirk and Susan, that's the connection. So we share grandbabies. So we live in Texas. We just moved here 2 months ago, and we love it. Oh my gosh, people are so kind here. It's just so wonderful. So that's just a little bit about me. And so can you guys, who weren't with us last week, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe why you signed up for the class. Is that possible? All right.
Yes.
Who wants to start?
I'll go first, Kathy. This is Diana Williams. And I call myself an Uber grandmama because I make sure that my grandkids get to school, pick up from school, go to their after school activities, and just hang out with them. So I do a lot of driving during the day. I have 1 daughter, and I adopted 2 boys later on in life. And I moved here in 2016 after a divorce. And I've had a lot of losses from 2016 up to about year 2021. I divorced, lost both of my parents, had 2 major surgeries. I'm a cancer survivor. Let's see, I just recently had to help a couple of sisters. So I'm going from Waco to Dallas for about 2.5 months trying to help them. So it's been a lot going on in my life these last few years. And when I listen to other people, they call and they tell me about their problems and their issues and things that they're going through. And sometimes, if you're not careful, you'll take their problems in with yours and trying to deal with everything. It's a little difficult that time. So, I thought when I saw this class, that would be great for me to sit in on this class and, try to see if I can get something that can not just help me, but help other people as well. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Great. And that's kind of what this class is for, right? I take you guys through a process of how to process your own grief and come to a completion, is what we call it. And in doing so, it hopefully helps you learn the process so that you can do the same thing, not only for yourself, and you apply it to other losses, but also it helps other people. You can help other people. It's a very practical program. So hopefully we can meet your goals there. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Right. And so Diana, so where do you live?
I live in League City, Texas.
Okay.
You know where that is?
I do not. But you said you live in...
Yeah, I moved from DeSoto, Texas, the Dallas area. A suburb of Dallas, and I'm in League City, Texas, which is in Galveston County, and I think they call it a suburb of Houston. I still haven't figured that out yet, being in Galveston County, but that's where I am, about 45 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico.
Got it. Okay. All right. All right. So Diana, I would encourage you to start to think about what loss in particular you might be interested in processing. You mentioned divorce and you mentioned some other challenges. So you might want to start thinking about what loss in particular, just one, is something you want to focus on as you go through the program. So might have to narrow
Okay.
it down a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
will do.
Who's next?
Well, I'll go next. That's okay.
Sure.
Name is Marcus May. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I came to Houston in 1983. I'm a member of the Lily Grove Missionary Baptist Church, where T.K. Anderson is the senior pastor. I've been there for going into 2 years. Prior to that, I was with the Antioch Missionary Baptist Church in downtown Houston, which is the oldest Black Baptist church in almost Texas. I was there 30 years, had many high profile positions there. I am an ordained deacon. I did, you name it in the church, I've done it. Okay. Had a major upheaval at Antioch, which led me to have to leave it, which I thought would never happen. And
Okay.
so, but the Lord did lead me to Lily Grove, where I have known the pastor for years. And so they have accepted myself and my wife with open arms. Love doing ministry work. Being a deacon, I involve myself with a lot of people in and out of the hospital. I'm always in and out of the hospital visiting families in bereavement, in grief, and so on and so forth. And so in those areas, I continue to serve the Lord and just want to get better at doing that, learning the right things to say and what not to say, and so on and so forth. And so as far as grief and that kind of thing is concerned, I have had 2 major losses. I'm the oldest of 7 in my family. I'm the only one that left our hometown, which was Cleveland.
Wow.
And two New Year's Eve ago, our family home where we all were raised and that sort of thing burned to the ground. My youngest brother was living there. He perished in that blaze. And so prior to that, I think 4 months before that, my mom passed. And so we had to burden that. Hadn't been a struggle, but it still comes to mind from time to time. And so, of course, being the oldest, I had to lead the family and getting them buried. And we've had other major losses in our family. And I just would say that the other loss is that has affected me, but I'm able to deal with it with God's grace, is the fact that I had to leave Antioch. All my friends were there. I was there since the time I came to Houston. And now being without my church family, so to speak, although I'm with a new church family, it's a big turnaround for me. And so it's not, I don't take it lightly. I had to go through a lot before I made the move to leave Antioch, and just being cut off from all my relatives, friends in Christ, all of a sudden is different. However, at Lily Grove, like I said, they have accepted with me and my wife with open arms, and just, that's my story for now.
Wow, that's a lot. And you know, I think it's hard sometimes when you're the one that's everyone looks to who's been in leadership, to give yourself some room and some space to have your own personal time to process your own personal feelings about things, right? Because everyone's looking to you, especially as the head of the family and being in leadership at a church. I think church leaders have a really difficult time sometimes finding that
Yeah,
space.
you're right. You're right. When I was there, I was vice president of the deacon board, chairman of the trustee board, you name it, church, anniversary. I was a chairman, new members committee. I was a chairman, on down the line. So, but the good thing about being at Lily Grove, I jokingly say, is that I no longer have those responsibilities. And I've been at HSSBI for several years, but I couldn't get to it the way I wanted to. But my last 2 courses, which is this one and another one I'm taking, and I would have completed the 36 courses. And that was something I always wanted to do, but
What?
I couldn't do it because I was so involved in ministry work. But now that I don't have those responsibilities anymore, I have devoted this last year into completing my studies here at SHBI, and I'm looking forward to completing and probably going on at higher heights in theology when this is done. I should be done at the end of this semester.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Woo, congratulations. You're almost there. I
Yeah.
feel so honored and privileged that you would spend time with us. That's great. Hopefully this will be a very practical tool for you as you minister to others, but for now, focusing on yourself. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. It's so nice to meet you. Okay, who's next? All right.
Oh, you can go ahead, ma'am.
Yes,
Whoever-
go right ahead. Tell us.
Oh.
How do you pronounce your name? I can't see it. It's so little on my screen.
It's Ariane.
Ariane. Okay.
So I'm originally from New Orleans. I've been here in Texas for 17 years. Actually, my husband he started attending SHBI, and that's how he met Brother Kurt and Miss Susan. And then I started coming like not too long after. So this is my first time that I'm actually doing it on my own.
Okay.
So the reason I'm in school, was originally going for nursing, but now that may have to change. So the reason why I'm taking this class is because my husband wants a divorce. And so just trying to juggle feelings about it, resentment, hurt, unforgiveness, all of those things. And so it's dealing with my grandmother as well, taking care of her, wanting to understand and learn how to deal with certain things biblically. Well, really all things biblically, concerning this situation in particular. And we have 3 boys together, 21, 17, and 15. So just trying to, and Brother Kirk and Miss Susan know them very well. And so just trying to learn how to help them through it as well. And one of them just walked through the door. That's why I'm looking to the right.
Mama doesn't get a whole lot of privacy, huh?
Not at all. Closed don't mean do not enter. And they still enter.
Of course.
Yeah. So yes, that's why I'm taking this class.
Okay, Ariane. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well,
I resonate a lot with what you're talking about, because that was probably my biggest loss, was the loss of my marriage. And so I connect with you on that, and I'll talk more about it in terms of my own story. I love doing this because I don't have to be a therapist. I get to share personal experience and to hopefully encourage you guys and to kind of walk you through the steps using myself as an example. So I don't get to do that as a therapist, right? Because it doesn't work as well that way. Awesome. Thank you, Ariane, for sharing that.
Can I offer one more thing?
Yes, of course.
So I don't want everybody to think I'm Superman. Okay. I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. The Lord has brought me a mighty long way. And I remember I've been through inpatient rehab. I was that bad. Took me a year, and I became closer to Christ while I was going through. BOW is my best friend. I have instructed those classes, but in my earlier years, I was a bad boy. And I was a full-fledged, almost 24/7 alcoholic.
Wow.
But it shows when the Lord touches you and you trust him, you allow him to guide you, he can bring you through. And I haven't had a drink or a drug in 30 years.
Wow.
And so recovery is possible, but I'm not always what I am now. you know, I do have a past.
Mhm.
And so I'm like Paul, we get those things that are behind, press toward the mark. But I just wanted to offer that, I've had my trials and tribs down through the years.
Well, thank you for saying that, Marcus. I think, you know, all of us are in need of grace, right? And I appreciate your vulnerability there. That shows an incredible amount of character on your part. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Put mine after you make it.
All right. So who's next? Anybody else want to? I don't want to ever like force you guys or make you feel uncomfortable. If you don't want to talk, that's totally okay. But if you weren't with us last week and you're with us tonight, if you would like to introduce yourself, go ahead. Anybody else? No? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Nancy. Oh, wait, and you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
I wonder if Ariane, if you said you were from New Orleans, so where do you live now? She's muted, so she may not have.
Did you hear the question, Ariane? I think you're muted. There you go.
I was trying to get it. I was getting an incoming call. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Yes, I did hear you. I stay in Southeast Houston.
Southeast. Yeah, I thought maybe you were a Houstonian.
No, I'm not.
or living in Houston anyway, or the near. And whoever commented about being the suburb of Houston, you're either in Texas, you're either suburb of Houston or San Antonio or Dallas. You know, we count everybody that we can.
Nancy, did you get everything worked out with the emails and the
Yes, yeah,
okay.
and I got the homework, and I didn't understand. Well, I didn't see that you wanted us to send it back to you.
Yeah, you don't need to send it back
That
to
we
me.
were just fill it out and think about it. So
yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to check in? Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. Usually the format is that I ask for you guys, if anybody just wants to kind of chime in, tell me a little bit about your process with the homework last week. Anything that stuck out to you? Was there anything that you didn't understand? I'm just curious to know sort of what your thoughts were. And then I'll go into a little bit more of the lecture piece. But tell me your impressions of the homework. Did all of you guys, everybody got the homework okay? And everyone got the book all right? Okay. Seeing a lot of heads nodding. Good. Okay. So I just want to help you guys too. If you haven't done the homework for this week, we have a little bit of a reprieve because the next 2 weeks are when I'm gone. And so you can catch up. So don't worry about it if you are kind of playing catch up, because sometimes it takes a couple of weeks to get in the groove in terms of getting the book and then going ahead and reading. So you're going to have week 2 homework after we meet tonight. I'll try to send it out. I know I got it out late last week, but I'll try to send it out either tonight or tomorrow. And then you have 2 weeks, right? So everybody should be able to be kind of caught up at that point. Okay. So
we're off on the 13th and 20th, and we meet again on the 27th.
Let me see, just let me check. That's correct. Yep. Okay. We're off the 13th and the 20th, and we meet the 27th. That's correct. Thanks for clarifying, Nancy. Yeah. Okay. So did you guys who weren't with us, did you get a chance to listen to last week's lecture? Did you guys, were you able to kind of?
Yeah, I did. I did.
I did too, Catherine. This is Diana.
Okay. Right. And Ariane, so you'll be playing catch up probably. Okay.
Right. My book just came today.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I would just encourage you to go ahead and listen to last week, because that will kind of give you a little overview as to sort of the progression, and because this material does build on itself. So that will be helpful. Okay. So did anybody have any impressions of the homework? Did anything kind of resonate with you in terms of you know, things that are kind of already shared or talked about when you think about grieving? Like, did anything come up that was different than maybe how you had sort of conceptualized yourself in grief or working with other people?
I did find something interesting when they were talking about denial being not being the first step in a death or a divorce. I don't think denial for me was the first step in my divorce. I was angry. That was my first step. In the death, it was maybe denial that, you know, with my mom and my dad, but I could even go back to my great grandparents. When they passed away, I was very young. I didn't understand what went on. So when my mom and dad passed away, I didn't want to go to the services because it was just something inside of me that keeps me away from funerals. You know, so I, you know, accepted that as a denial stage for the death part of it. And maybe I need to see counseling for that. You know, I don't know, but it's just hard for me to go to funerals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what they're trying to kind of basically highlight is that there is no progression that's consistent for every person. Everybody's grief is processed differently, and it's unique to each person, and not only to each person, but to each relationship, right? So we lost my dad 2 years ago. So my process is very different than my sister's because we had very different personalities, which contributed to having a very different relationship. So that's a lot of what they're talking about is, you know, Kubler-Ross's sort of, you know, stages of grief really are kind of brought into question here because those stages are not consistent for each person. We can't categorize it and neatly put it into a nice little bow like that. And so what they're trying to do is kind of help you understand that it ebbs and flows. And I think that's partly why grief is so difficult, because we have such, you know, diametrically opposing feelings sometimes. And so part of what we're doing here is helping you to integrate those feeling states so that nothing feels too overwhelming and you have permission to be happy and joyful about certain aspects of what you enjoyed about that person or that situation. But then you can be angry or sad, or in denial, you know, whatever. And you have these feeling states, and sometimes they can fluctuate within an hour, within minutes, right? And that can be very confusing for people and very disorganizing. So what they're helping you understand is that each person will process their own feeling states differently based on the type of relationship and whatnot. For me, I was sharing that my biggest loss was the loss of my marriage. And so because we were like best friends. And so I had all these really good, wonderful memories with this person. And so it was really hard for me to process or to balance that as being part of that whole umbrella of relationship, because something really devastating happened too, right? And so on the other end of the spectrum, there was a lot of hurt and anger, and feelings of betrayal, things like that. So, and confusion, like you name it, that, you know, every single feeling across the spectrum happened. And so in completing that loss, I had to deal with all of those different emotions and the depth of each of those emotions. Some of them are much deeper than others. So that's partly why it's important to choose one particular loss so that you don't get too overwhelmed, and you're able to better organize your process. So, did anybody resonate with in the homework where they're talking about like needing the approval of others or things being said that weren't really helpful? Has anybody ever experienced that?
I have, and I can recall my sister passing in 2019, and I would hear, "Oh, if you need anything, I'm there for you." And then they went on to tell me how I should process my sister's death, and tell me how long I should grieve, and what they did not know was that my parents talked about death often. And so I accept death totally different than everyone else. I grieve for a moment, and then if I know that they have a relationship with Christ, the worry is over, because then again I know I'll see them again because I have a relationship with Christ. And so I have been able to identify that part. What worries me is when you don't have a relationship with Christ. And so if that answer cannot be answered for me, I think that's when the sorrow, the hurt, and all those stages of grief probably set on. But for my sister, I knew that it was her time. My sister had battled breast cancer twice, and we knew that she had gone through a whole bunch of things. So my sister was tired, and she did not want to be in pain. And so I felt that it would be selfish for me to want her here with me, knowing that my sister is in pain, my sister is in agony. And so now since then, I think that when I hear of death, or when it affects me personally, I look at it differently, and it really just depends on the person and how close the relationship is. But I did recognize some of the stages that the person was talking about, but the language that people use when people are going through, it's sometimes it's just best not to say anything. And people don't know how to say that because they want people to feel better. And so how I like to approach it is I just sit quietly and wait.
And you know,
Yeah.
sometimes they say things, or maybe they say things that aren't very helpful. And sometimes people do that not only because they want you to feel better, but because they want to relieve their own sense of anxiety.
Absolutely. I
It's,
believe that.
it's more about them or us, if we're the one that's comforting someone, than it is about letting somebody sit in their pain and feel those uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that's what he was talking about when he was telling the stories about when he was a kid, and I think one of them lost a dog, and his dad said, "Oh, we'll go buy another one," like a couple of days after the dog died, and and he did not get a chance to, grieve the dog's death. And it's like, go in your room and don't cry, and little things like that. And so it kind of triggered me, because it's been said, oh, I'll either get you another one, or you're fine, stop crying, those things like that. So I definitely connected with the book.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Anybody else have any insights?
I'm a little confused about the homework. Is that reading the book, or do y'all have some?
So did you get the email that had questions that went with the chapter?
No, ma'am. Not that I know of. I am having phone problems, so, but
Okay.
actually, I did have them in my house on my phone.
Okay, Valerie. Well, so yes, there's a email that I send and it has homework questions based on what you've read in the book. So that's okay. So if you want, I can resend it to you. I'll just make a note.
Oh, I'd appreciate that. I know I signed up a little late.
Okay, I will check it.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Okay, that's great, Valerie. I'll check on it and then I'll make sure you get it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go into week 2. And feel free, if you guys have a question or something, just raise your hand in the on your camera, because then I can see it a little easier. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. But you guys, some of you guys kind of talked about within the church or within the Christian community. And I wanted to share a little bit about Christian communities in general. And that is that our churches are filled with believers who are grieving, because we all have significant losses. And whether it's the loss of a marriage, the loss of we define loss as the loss of a hope, of a dream, or an expectation. So it's not just losing somebody that we've loved or someone we've been close to. It's also the loss of a hope, a dream, or an expectation. Okay. So for me, it was the loss of a hope that I would have the same husband my whole life, that we would raise our own grandchildren together, that we would retire together and travel, right? I had to grieve the loss of that dream when my marriage failed, right? So it wasn't just the practical parts of losing that relationship, but I had to grieve the loss of all of the things that I was never going to experience in the future, right? And I think when you're in the midst of it, it's you're in survival mode, right? You don't think about necessarily processing that. Then I had to grieve the loss of what I hoped for my children, right? That they would never have to deal with parents who were divorced, parents who were not going to be able to reconcile. Then I had to deal with the loss of my own sense of safety, my own sense of my ability to trust, right? So the reason I'm bringing this up is that I want to help expand your vision in terms of people grieving. And our churches have so much pain in terms of people, because we're all just people coming together that are hurting. And a lot of us have come to the church because the Lord has given us the ability to heal in a supernatural way. He gives us his love and his insight and his supernatural intervention in our healing process. And but I think if you take, so this is my glass, right? This is my big water cup, and it's full. It's full to the very top. Okay. And all of this whole thing is filled with the pain and unresolved grief, the unresolved losses that I haven't had a chance, space, or room, or time, or the luxury of processing and completing, right? And so we come to church, and what happens is the church sometimes tries to pour more in, right? And what happens when it gets too full, right? It overflows. And so what we're trying to do through this process, and my heart is that churches would really adopt the grief recovery, what we're doing here, because as we're able to empty out some of that pain and complete that loss, like when I processed some of my own pain, it gave me this much more room to pour things in that were from the Lord, that he had for me. But I couldn't receive a lot of what the church talked about, a lot of what God had for me, because it was too full. There was too much in there. So part of what we're doing here is allowing you the privilege of pouring some of that out so you have some more emotional space to put more in, that's good. Like freedom and love and the ability to love others and, less anxiety, less depression, less sadness, less pain, less, so I feel like that's just important to kind of realize that not only do we have, our cups are full, but those around us, their cup is pretty full too. Right. So I think it's important for church leadership to kind of conceptualize things that way, because a lot of times church leadership doesn't understand why people aren't more responsive, or why they aren't more, why they don't have a greater capacity to accept the things that God has for them. And I think that sometimes that's the reason, is because it's just too full. There's just too much there and we can't add to it. It's too overwhelming. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you guys about active listening. Active listening is absolutely necessary when you're working with somebody who's grieving. And it's something that we therapists do, hopefully, all the time. And when you actively listen, what you're doing is you are leaving space for other people to have room to really communicate with you. And what I want to do is help you understand that most of the time when we're listening, we're not really hearing everything that's being said. So what I'm going to try to do is help you kind of listen with your heart. So I would say, listen with your heart, right? Rather than just listening to what's going on cognitively, what's logical, right? So when we actively listen, there are some components, and I'm going to put it up here on my screen so you can see them. I'm going to lose you guys for a minute, but can you guys see that okay? Okay, so when we
we're not seeing any. I'm not seeing anything, Kathy.
Can't see it?
Nothing, yeah.
I see you.
Oh, you can't see my screen, huh?
Mm-mm.
Hold on. Well, maybe my screen sharing's not on. That might be.
But
right.
thank you for saying what you just said. That was just spot on.
What resonated with you?
Well, that our cup is full,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really aware that I can't take, I have to leave space, by myself so I can recover when I do things. That if I can't go nonstop,
Right.
Emotionally or otherwise.
Right. Exactly. All right, here we go. All right, now I'm sharing my screen. Can you guys see? Let's see.
Yes.
Can you
I
see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So these are some tips, and I always joke around because I always tell people, like, listening is super hard to do. It's really hard. Like in grad school, we had to take a whole year of a course just how to listen. Like, that's ridiculous. Listening 101. So, but it is really hard to listen because we naturally kind of get in our own head, and we all listen through our own lens of what's happening around us and what's happened to us, right? So here's some tips on how to listen actively. You can use this with everybody, hopefully. The first one is to ask open-ended questions. Does anybody know what an open-ended question is?
It's something that they can't just answer yes or no to.
Yep. And I just asked you one, right? That was open-ended. Exactly. So instead of are you feeling sad today? Right? Yes or no? That's closed-ended. It's, I'm wondering like what you might be feeling. Right? That's an open-ended question, which means that the person answering you can go any direction. I might assume somebody is sad, but that might not be what they're feeling. They might be feeling discouraged. They might be feeling minimized. They might be feeling tired, right? But we tend to kind of come to the conclusion before the person has a chance to weigh in and answer, right? My kids just hate this because they're like, Mom, don't therapize me. Right? It's so funny. I'm like, no, I'm just like truly wanting to know. And I'm trying to give you space to like be able to answer. But that's an open-ended question, is where it's not a yes or no answer. It's not a black and white answer. The second thing is to paraphrase or summarize what the other person is trying to say, just so you can completely understand them, right? And you have to really track with people to hear what they're saying, not only what they're saying, but what the emotion is behind it, so that you can track with them. So that can sound something like, so it like, help me understand, you are feeling discouraged because you didn't get the position, but in some ways you're kind of happy because you didn't really want the job anyway. Did I get that right? Yeah, I can see where that would be kind of confusing for you. Like you're kind of happy, but you're kind of discouraged. Okay, that's paraphrasing and summarizing. And it takes practice to do that. And the cool thing with that is that they can say, they can come, right? That's dialogue, right? They can come back and say, yeah, and the more I think about it, I'm actually really relieved. Oh, so, and then you're listening for emotions. So you're hearing discouraged, happy, and relieved, right? So one of the things I think is helpful is if to go online and just print out a feelings vocabulary. Okay. And a feelings vocabulary will help you like deepen your own appreciation for different feeling states. And it will help you be able to categorize, as you summarize, people's feeling states by using words that are maybe more appropriate with what they're really feeling, what's really going on for them. Because it may be, oh, I really never thought about feeling relieved, but yeah, I do feel relief, right? So, so that's paraphrasing and summarizing. It's interesting when you do couples work, I'll have couples do that. Like I'll have couples basically talk about maybe, the wife, what she's feeling and what's going on for her. And I'll have him just simply paraphrase and summarize. And it's amazing. I'll have couples like the wife may just burst into tears because she's never really felt like he was able to really hear her. But by paraphrasing and summarizing, it's kind of like that validation that, yeah, I'm hearing you, I'm present with you, and I'm listening. Okay. The next thing is to practice non-judgmental listening by setting aside your own bias or your own point of view. And this one's really hard because when you start feeling that little tinge in your stomach or you start getting triggered in some way, it's really natural to want to jump in and give a judgment of some sort. And so you have to really be, because that's not something that people, that's not something that makes people feel safe, right? If your bias is more important than their ability to be able to communicate with you. Because there are ways that you can talk about disagreements or a different point of view. But when someone's grieving, it's really important to create that safe space so that they can they can feel whatever it is they feel and know that it's okay. All right. So we'll go back to the divorce, right? So I had a lot of people tell me, well, it'll probably work out because, that's God's plan for you. That's God's plan for all of us in marriage, is that it would last, right? But in my case, it was absolutely not possible. And so that was their bias, and that was their heartfelt conviction, which was okay. But in the process of me grieving, that's not something that was helpful to me. And I got that my ex-husband was the worship leader at a very large church in Southern California. And so our divorce was on display for all to see. And we have 5 children. So it was very, very public. And everybody had an opinion, right? And so what they didn't know, and I'll just share this with you because my life is an open book and I have spoke on this a lot because betrayal and trauma is my specialty. My husband decided that he had same-sex attraction and betrayed me on many occasions with same-sex partners. So it was not possible to ever regain trust in the relationship because so much damage had been done. And there was no way that there was going to ever be recovery for me. I did hold on for many years, probably 4 years. It took me 4 years to finally divorce him because I didn't believe in divorce. But God finally released me because he wanted freedom for me. And my ex-husband had made his choices and the Lord released me. So I just share that with you because I feel like it's important for people to understand that having a bias and a judgment can be very wounding, especially within the church, because scripture does have mandates about marriage and about commitment and about like a lot of things. But it was really important that that people understood that my pain was important and it mattered more than somebody communicating their bias. Yes, Diane, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm glad that you shared that with us because my situation was similar to that. It was very hurtful. I didn't know what was going on for a few years, but when I found out, it was hard for me to deal with. My husband was a pastor at a church. Not only was he attracted to the opposite sex, but to the same sex.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found out, I was afraid. I was hurt. I was confused. I didn't know, how to handle it because, you can't play with God. Mm-hmm. And being in the pulpit like we were, that's what I was afraid of. What would happen? Mm-hmm. Finally, I said, I can't do this. I've got to get out of this situation. And as I prayed about it and I stayed in my scriptures, the Lord assured me, that I didn't have to worry about anything, that he was there with me. Mm-hmm. And he was going to help me through it. Mm-hmm. And he did, and I thank God for that. So your testimony has really helped me this moment to try to clear some things up in my head, in my mind.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
I just wanted to share that.
I'm so glad. I'm sort of a subject matter expert, unfortunately, in this regard. I did my thesis on the effects of betrayal trauma on Christian women whose husbands have gone into a gay lifestyle. So it is extremely traumatic. And it's really important not to minimize the level of trauma that goes along with that particular betrayal. It's a little different than when someone has an affair, because this betrayal happens from day one. They know that they have same-sex attraction, and yet they choose to get married and have children, even when they've never given you the opportunity to, to stay to make that decision on their own. So it's a very traumatic it's a very, very traumatic loss. And it's, yeah, I could go on for days about it. And I've done a lot of speaking on it. I've done a lot of grief seminars on it with women that are going through this, for women all over the world, actually. So yeah, it's very specific, but that's why I'm very open about it, because it does encourage women, and God is so faithful and he is so good. And I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be doing the work that I do if it wasn't for the gift of my pain and the gift of my grief. So, and you know what, honestly, at the end of the day, I just want him to use me any way he chooses to. And it's, you know, it's the whole package. So I am who I am, right? And we're all the same way, right? Every single one of us who has lost something or is grieving, I want you guys to conceptualize it as your pain as being a gift, because at the end of the day, it really is the gift. It gives you a deeper, more powerful influence and testimony, not just testimony, but relationship. Is if you can be vulnerable with your pain, then that's what brings others to you, because it makes them feel safe. Because you are safe, right? So it's not an accident that you're here, especially you, Diana. It's not an accident, right? And there's so much hurt out there, and people just need to know they're not alone in their pain. So, all right. So the next, like, active listening tip is to demonstrate patience, and that's hard. By focusing on the other person instead of your own thoughts. So if you find yourself wandering in your mind as someone is talking to you, try it, but as much as you can, like, change your body language, like lean in, like make sure you maintain eye contact. So it's really important for you to be able to be patient while other people are kind of trying to figure out what it is they're feeling and where to go next, right? So patience is really important. And then, so kind of what I just talked about, to show nonverbal communication, like eye contact, things like that, leaning in, kind of like what I just shared with you, and avoid distractions and multitasking, right? So, obviously cell phones is a huge distraction, but, you know, maybe there's somebody that tends to kind of interrupt sometimes, or so it's just important to kind of make sure that you have a clean slate in terms of your ability to really focus on that person, get to a quiet place so that there aren't any distractions. Okay, so that's some active listening stuff. And the next slide, I want to talk about, you know, people who really want to be healed. You guys are here because on some level, you guys have a hurt or a loss, or our hearts are broken. And it might be a death. It might have happened sooner than later, or it might be something that happened a really long time ago that you just haven't ever had a chance to really think about and focus on. And kind of like what I talked about, it could be a divorce, a breakup of a romantic relationship, not even necessarily the loss of marriage. Maybe it's the loss of a best friend. Maybe it's the loss of a church family, like Marcus was talking about. Maybe it's just like you're in transition and it's the loss of everything that's familiar to you if you've moved away. So there are so many losses that we can't even categorize all of them, and they're personal to you. And let's see what I was going to say. Sometimes losses can be caused by an awareness that your life is just not as happy or fulfilling as you had hoped it would be, right? Maybe you just kind of wake up and go, you know, this isn't what I thought life was going to be like. And you've never had a chance to just explore that disappointment. Right. So whatever the cause of your brokenness or your broken heart, you just know that whatever you're feeling just isn't good. And you need some healing. So I think it's important for all of us to remember that we don't want to tell anybody how they should feel, right? You already know how you feel. And that's valuable. And keep in mind too, nobody else knows how you feel either, right? Sometimes it's easy for people to kind of tell you how you should feel. And the minute they say should, like, all the hairs on the back of my neck go up, right? Because nobody has the ability to tell you what's right for you, because feelings are going to be authentic and they are what they are, and nobody can dictate that for you. And part of what we're going to try to do is help you remember what the loss felt like, because we want you to connect with your feeling states, right? So we all have a certain capacity for happiness, and whether grief is caused by a death or a major loss or incomplete recovery has a lifelong impact on a person's capacity for happiness. As we complete our losses, we're going to touch parts of ourselves that are going to feel pain. Some of us are going to feel some isolation and some loneliness, and that's normal when you're processing significant loss. Okay. The reason I say that a negative impact on unresolved grief can affect you for a lifelong capacity for happiness is that most of us have been carrying a lot of pain for a long time. And when that happens, it kind of shades our ability to walk in a freedom that isn't somehow influenced by our loss. Okay. So, what I mean by that is, I'll just take my example, right? So if I had never really completed the loss of my marriage, I wouldn't have had any emotional availability to move on and have the capacity for something new in my life, right? So Patrick and I dated for a really long time, which was helpful. And it gave me a long time to be able to complete the loss process, so that loss was not influencing my ability to be in a relationship with another person. And had I not taken the time to do that, then a lot of my relationship would still be influenced by feelings that I had not resolved. Right? So it's really important that you complete this process, and we have very practical ways for you to complete it. So, and I love this point that grievers don't need to be fixed, right? You don't need to be fixed. We don't need to compare our losses with one another, or with each other's pain. I think one of the things that is kind of difficult, I've heard from a lot of my clients when I do grief work, is that they'll go to a grief group of some sort, and somebody is processing the grief for the loss of a grandma. And then we have a young mom that's grieving the loss of her, 6-month-old baby. Right? It's very natural to compare those losses, because you have one that's lived a full life, and then you have, a mom who never got to enjoy her child. And so a lot of times in grief groups, it's difficult because it's just natural to compare. Well, how, your loss isn't as painful as my loss. Right? So in this group, what we do is we just remind people that everybody's pain is unique to them, and it's valuable, and it's theirs, and they get to have it, and to whatever extent they have it. And nobody's pain is more valuable than somebody else. And then it's important, like, we don't criticize or judge anybody else for how they're processing their grief, right? And I always kind of talk about this within Christian communities because we tend to be a little more judgmental that people should grieve a certain way if they're really a true Christian, right? And giving people the space and the grace to feel whatever it is they feel, whether it be toward God or toward a person, right? That they don't have to meet our expectation of what is acceptable and not acceptable. Because otherwise it just shuts down the process, and then you're not a safe person anymore. Right? Grievers do need to be listened to. And they need to be listened to with dignity and respect. Right? So that makes people feel comfortable. What else do grievers need? Okay. So grievers need total honesty. You can only complete your relationship with truth. Okay. So this is kind of difficult because if you just go through the motions and you don't connect with what's happening emotionally and what your own truth is in terms of how you really feel, it's difficult to complete the loss. And I kind of use my dad as an example with this point. Okay. My dad, we just lost him 2 years ago, and my dad was not a nurturing person. He was very harsh. He was very loud and very boisterous when we were little. And I was afraid of him for most of my life when I was young. I became a Christian when I was in junior high school. I prayed for his salvation. And he came into my bedroom one day when I was in 7th grade, and he said, "I saw that prayer calendar on your wall, and I saw you were praying for me. So I decided I'm going to church. We're going to church this morning." And I was like, "Whoa." And sure enough, he gave his life to the Lord. He actually rededicated his life. And so throughout the rest of my time with my dad, there was always this attempt to be close to him, but he just didn't know how. He didn't have the emotional language. He didn't have the ability to express feelings. So to this day, I never was told that he was proud of me. He never told me he loved me. But I know those things were true about him, right? But because of my experience, I had a lot of resentment and anger toward my dad. And that truth was very hard for me to reconcile, because I know that he became a very different person when he gave his life to the Lord. But that didn't minimize the fact that I was still afraid of him. And a lot of my perceptions of men were really carved out by how afraid I was of my dad. So I had a truth that I had to either decide I was going to be honest about in terms of how I felt. And I chose to go that direction. And I was honest about my feelings that I didn't get some things that I wished I could have gotten from my dad, because he was just a very limited person in some ways. Okay. That's the example, right? You have your own truth, and being authentic about your own truth is important as you complete a loss. So there also might be details of your life that you're unwilling to say to others, and that's okay. That's all right. The point is that you are able to touch base with what's going on inside of you in terms of how you feel, and you're authentic with it. You don't have to share it publicly. That's okay. And then all you have to do is tell your emotional truth about your event or your experience. Okay. Uniqueness and individuality is something that grievers need. They need to know it's okay to be unique and have their own sense of individuality when it comes to processing their loss. Since every relationship is totally unique, you need to honor each person's uniqueness and individuality. That kind of goes with the respect piece. And no one's opinion is important other than the griever himself or herself. So their opinion is the only thing that really matters when you're working with people who are grieving. Individual recovery hinges on each person being able to communicate their own thoughts and feelings without interruption, analysis, criticism, or judgment. Okay? So that's the goal. Is that you can be that for someone else and that we can be that for you. Right? So we have undelivered and unrealized communication of feelings. So we need to learn how to communicate feelings effectively so that we can complete unfinished business or undelivered emotional communication. So when we're young, this is kind of what I touched on last week. When we're young, hopefully the goal is to have a parent, usually our primary attachment. It could be grandma, it could be grandpa, but somebody in our life that helps us understand how we're feeling, what it's called, and then find a word for it. Okay. So when we're young, we need to know that if we fall down and hurt ourselves, or if somebody pushes us on the playground, that we have somebody that's secure that we can go to and say, this is what happened. And I don't want to see that person again because my tummy gets really wiggly and I feel like I want to throw up. I feel like I'm going to be sick. Okay. So I'm 6 years old and that's how I'm feeling. And I tell my mom, and my mom can either say,
can I get your phone?
oh, can you mute yourself, Suzanne?
Oh, I'm sorry. I lost track of stuff here.
That's all right. Go ahead and just mute it. There you go. Thanks.
Okay.
Are you muted, Suzanne?
I don't know. Let me look.
No, you're not yet.
Am I now?
Nope, you're still. Got it? I think you're muted. Let's see here. Okay, so I've been pushed on the playground and somebody called me a redheaded fire engine head, which did really happen to me when I was little. And I could go to my mom and say, Susie called me a fire engine head again. And I get wiggly tummy and I don't ever want to go back to that school again because she's so mean. Right? I can have a mom that can say, oh, sweetie, right? It sounds like that was really scary for you. Like, did you feel like she might do something, or did you feel scared, or do you feel like you were sad because you thought she was your friend, right? So you have a mom that can hold you in that and help you name some of those feelings, right? And walk you through it so that feeling doesn't become so huge that it completely overtakes you, right? If you have a mom that is not present, not tracking with you, has no emotional language of her own to be able to help you, then it's more likely that you're going to feel even bigger feelings and bigger emotions next time you're around Susie. And you don't know what to do with it because you're a little kid. And so your feelings get bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's nowhere to go with it. And feelings become so overwhelming for little kids that their only option is to ignore how they feel, stuff it down inside, minimize their feelings, and try to get through their day. Little kids are not meant to be able to cope with such enormous challenges when they're young. If you have a mom and dad that's fighting and you're a little kid, it's extremely overwhelming for kids because they don't know what to do with all of those conflicting feelings. And if they don't have a safe person to go to that helps them organize it, it's even more confusing for them. The sad thing is, I think most of us as adults had that kind of growing up experience. And so what we have to do now as we're grieving is we have to touch base with some of those times when we didn't get a chance to organize how we felt. We're going to go back and do it as we grieve losses. And the good news is that we're older now, right? We're older now, so we have the ability to not be so overwhelmed when we're looking at some of those circumstances. You know, you might look at your situation and think, oh, that was such a silly thing. You know, there's no reason I would be upset about that. But I'm telling you, when I do trauma work, it's amazing how much stuff was traumatic when we were young that never got dealt with. So this process will bring up some of that stuff for you. And we're gonna really become more and more aware of unrealized feelings. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. So there's so many feelings: happiness, sadness, love, fear, anger, relief, compassion. And those are just some of the things that you might be feeling. We don't need to categorize every single feeling. We just need to know that it's okay to feel it. And also, you know, it's important to know that we don't have to be histrionic or dramatic. You don't even have to have tears. It just means that you are having a heartfelt, sincere, and honest experience with yourself about whatever it is that you're grieving the loss. Okay? There's no expectation. It's completely a personal thing. Okay? So I'm going to stop there because that's a lot. And I want you guys to weigh in. Any questions? I want you to kind of tell me where you're at. Tell me what's going on for you guys. But you
So I have a
Go ahead.
lot of different things. And it's interesting because I took this earlier in the spring of this year, and that was right after six funerals in the last 3 months before that. And then we've had another one since then. But anyway, so I don't know. I have one year was extremely tough for my family. My brother's sons died that year, and his mother-in-law had died just a little bit before that, and it was a tragic thing. And then my nephews, it was all tragic, and there was a daughter-in-law. So there was 3 deaths that year, all of their family, and he had 2 kids, and so they both passed away. Anyway, and then there's still unresolved things with my brother and my mother, and I guess my dad, probably. As you were describing yours, I'm like, oh, maybe I do have some issues there.
Mhm.
And then like life is not like I thought it would be. Oh my goodness. It is so different than I thought it would be at this stage. And it's just kind of like day by day, figuring out what to do, how to make it. And then the other thing is my son and his wife they don't want us around and have not let us be around their kids. We live near them, and the granddaughter is 20 and the grandson is 18. And so, and so this is really we had hoped all these years that when they graduate, maybe they'll reach out to us. But so far it's not happening. And anyway, so that's pretty tough. So I don't know which ones to pick, but I'm gonna pray about it, figure out which one to work on this time.
And would you explain histrionic behavior? I'm not familiar with that word.
I think we lost her.
We did.
Yeah, I think we did.
Well, I'm on my phone and it says histrionic is a pattern of exaggerated emotionality and attention-seeking behaviors. So we don't have to be dramatic.
Yeah. Some different families and different traditions,
Mhm.
Like I went to one funeral where the young wife just threw herself on the casket and was just crying and crying and crying. And so some of the family, went over there. Well, that was kind of normal for them.
Mhm.
And from the way I was raised, it's like, no. Anyway, so when that's some of what I would think histrionics would be.
But I appreciated that she said that it doesn't have to be an emotional drama, to go through some old issues or whatever, that we can.
Yeah. I kind of block the crying. I don't cry much at all. I think it's because of, the way I was raised.
Some of the things that she was talking about, it really opened up my mind to start paying more attention to myself instead of other people. I'm one of those people, I can listen to people and I can give them some good advice. But from what she's saying tonight, I need to pay more attention to myself and try to heal some areas in my life, as well as trying to help other people find their healing. So this class is good for me. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, because we tend to portray or not portray. We push our stuff onto other people, If we expect them to act like or be going through the same feelings we went through, if they've experienced the same tragedy.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have a tendency, we want to maybe walk around like we're just happy about all situations, and our problems are deep down inside of us. I'm not a person to talk about my situations. I hold things inside. But this has
everybody does.
Yeah. This has brought some things out of me that I didn't realize was there.
That's beautiful.
I said, oh, I wear more masks than I think I do. Kathy, you're back. We waited for you.
Oh, yes.
It says she's back, but we don't see her.
We still can't hear you.
See her. I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
There you are. Yay. Now we can see you.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what happened. It just, everything went black.
We just tripped on.
Nothing like teaching about a grief class and how you have to be present. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, Brenda, you were talking. Go ahead.
Well, I kind of completed it and then I was waiting for your response. And that's when there is just dead silence.
Oh man, that's bad. Okay. So, oh, so that resonated with you, it sounds like. Yeah. And the thing that I find so interesting, Brenda, is that, you have a gift that you're going to minister to people. And it feels to me like sometimes God gives us things because now we have this wide range of loss.
Definitely.
Yeah, give me something I haven't experienced, right? So,
Really, yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what comes of it, like how it's like he never wastes anything. No. And it's really interesting. I don't really market for clients. I pray. I just go, okay, Lord, I'll just see whoever you think I should see. And it's kind of the same way. He will bring people to you that you have a unique perspective. And that's the person that's been ordained for you to be with. And that's how he works. So he doesn't waste any of it. So, wow. Okay.
Yes. And if I think of it as a gift.
Yep, it is a gift.
Yeah. Wow.
Grief is a gift. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it is. Trust me. All right. Latrell, did you say?
Thank you.
What did you have?
I was going to say, after uncovering a lot of my my from like 18 to 20, 18 to 40, and just now my childhood, I have connected with people who have had similar situations as I, and either they're kind of like not in the healing process, and I have gotten to that stage, and so I'm able to witness to them and let them know that the things that I went through, and it's kind of scary because they're like, oh yeah, that sounds just like me, and so I don't want to overstep my boundaries when I speak to them and telling them what they should do. And so what I find myself doing is saying what worked for me is X, Y, and Z, and then I tell them how I got through and the tools that I use, and go from there. But I stop telling them, you should do this, you should do that. Everyone works differently. And so we have to be mindful of what we say and what we do, because we may trigger. And I don't like to be triggered. And so I like to treat people how I want to be treated, in that way. And so that way is gentle. And so I do my best to be as gentle as I can when I speak, but I speak from personal experience and not to just point my finger at.
Latrell, I'm wondering, how did you do this week? Were you triggered? I was worried about you a little.
You know what? This is crazy. I just reached out to my therapist yesterday because I actually was triggered, and it was out of nowhere, and I didn't know that I was triggered until after I had said what I said, and I was like, oh my goodness, it was about my mother. I was like, she asked me about my mother. How dare her? Like, she had no idea. I think she was saying what the question was, she was like, how is your mother going to feel about you telling your story? And after I got off the phone with her, or as I was telling her, I just began to say, it's my story. So I really don't care how she feels, because it's about me. It's not about her. And I didn't say it like this to her. And I said it so gentle. And after I got off the phone with the person, I was exhausted. But I was like, how dare her ask about my mother and asks me what she feels, and it has absolutely nothing to do with her. And so I reached out to my therapist and I said, I was triggered today out of nowhere. And so it must be some residue somewhere that I have not addressed, or I'm just not noticing. And so I'll speak to her on Friday
Okay.
about this. Thank you for asking though.
Good, good. All right. So I'm thinking about you. All right, Ariane, did you have something? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done, Latre?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Ariane.
Well, I was listening to you and Miss Diana talk about your offenses because you guys were the ones. So my story is different. I was the offender. I was the one that cheated. And so I guess the reason, and I have a question after, because you said something. You said that God released you. So I guess I'm offended because it happened 4 years ago. And 4 years later, just out of the blue, he just packed all his stuff, found an apartment and left. And but before all of that, it was like I kept saying, hey, we need to go to counseling. Hey, we need to see somebody. Hey, it's not right. Hey, we didn't fix it. It was basically like the situation happened. And a whole bunch of stuff happened after that, and everything was just swept under the rug. It was never dealt with.
Right.
And so his emotions and how he felt and his hurt, because you said that your husband was a youth pastor. So my husband was going to be a pastor. And so I don't just think it started there. I think it even started way before then, because I was the one offended. So it was just really almost throughout the whole marriage until we both got saved in 2006. And so I guess so how do you deal with when you have feelings of, I thought you forgave me, but obviously you didn't? How do you anger, how you just up and leave and we have children? How do your children feel? Did you even think about your children? Are you even worrying about the relationship with your children? How do you deal with just, I mean, it's just so much. And so how do you even deal with hearing from God? That's a frustrating part for me, because I'm praying and I'm trying to hear, but it's like I can't even hear. And I get so angry because I want to hear and I can't. And so it's just like, I have like 30 different feelings, and I'm trying not to cry because I just
Yeah. I think in my situation, the offense happened once, the first time when I was 7 months pregnant with my third baby. And I had found out that what had been going on, my ex-husband was very suicidal. He told me when I was on my birthday, I'm 7 months pregnant with my third baby. And he said, I think I need to go to the hospital because I'm pretty suicidal. It was on my birthday. I was like, okay, and he had suffered from a lot of depression and was really struggling. And so that was the first offense. That was the first time it happened. We went on to have that baby, and then we were together a couple more years, and then we had twins after that. So there was a period of time in there that there was forgiveness, there was reconciliation, there was a lot of help and support. And then he decided that instead of being truthful with me about what was going on, we replayed the whole scenario all over again. And that was when I knew that I couldn't ever stay in the marriage, because there was no ability to reconcile after that, because we had already gone through that process. I think that when someone makes a mistake and is truly sorrowful and repentant, and has been able to move on and move past it, then the slate is clear, right? And if he wants to use that mistake against you for his own purposes now, 4 years later, then that's not something for you to continue to beat yourself up over, right? It was okay that my husband had made a mistake and there was complete forgiveness the first time. Complete. I mean, I went on, we had more children and whatnot. But so my situation was very different because we had already gone through that process of what you're describing, right? And if your husband is using your mistake against you, then that's something that you need to be clear about. And you get the opportunity to either receive that shame and guilt, or that you lay it down. It's like, no, that's already been, we've already dealt with that and we're moving on. Do you have other reasons that you don't want to stay in the marriage? So I think it's just important to get some support to help you organize more about what's going on in your particular situation. And this is going to be a little tricky for you, because it's hard to grieve something that you're in the process of losing, right? You're in the process of losing something and you haven't actually completely lost it yet. And so you're more in kind of in that middle ground where you're anticipating the complete loss of it, but you're still in that part where you're trying to figure it out. So I would encourage you to meet with somebody. Like, do you have a therapist or a counselor or somebody that you can meet with to help you kind of work through some of those feelings?
No.
Okay. Maybe we could get you some support, because I think it might be important for you. Do you have friends and family? Do you have support?
I do. It's just so many situations.
Mhm.
It's just so many things, and I'm basically here. But I don't have family here. Just
Okay.
my grandmother and his mom. But then it was a situation that happened there, not between me and his mom, but
Okay.
my sister-in-law. And so I backed up, and I'm like, what more can I take?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, maybe I can help you, maybe offline. We'll see if maybe you and I can connect, because I resonate with you. But I would just say, don't allow evil to label you or define you because you made a mistake. Don't accept that, right? Give yourself grace and forgiveness, and understand that it's okay for you to move forward. And if he begins to try to use that against you, to try to define that that's who you are, right? And you've already, there's grace, there's forgiveness. So being able to lean into that and hold on to that as being truth is what's important, right? Right. It's different when there's no reconciliation. In my case, he had no desire to repent the second time like he did the first time. It was a completely different heart. He had given himself over, and it was very obvious. And he still does, 15 years later. So I think that it's very different. So try not to put yourself in that situation in terms of that's who you are. Don't let your mistake define you. Right? I know. It is. Yeah. Why don't you stay on the line for a little bit? Can you stay on with me for a minute? Okay, because I think our class is over. But you stay on with me for a second, okay? I'm going to stop the recording and let's you and I chat for a little bit, okay? All right. Thanks, you guys. Are you all okay?
Enjoyed it, Catherine.
Did ya? Okay, Liliana,
Yeah.
I didn't get to hear anything from you. 2 weeks, you're on, girl.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
guys.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye, guys.
Great vacation.
Soon. Thank you.
Good night.
I'll be,
Good night, everybody.
we'll be praying for everybody.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenda. Bye, guys.
Let me leave the meeting. There's something I gotta press. Oh, it's mine.